I'm the faculty director of the Easton Technology Management Center. And as all of you know, the vision of the Easton Center is leadership preparedness in a tech-driven world. Really the idea that every business today is a tech company and really thinking about how to use technology to create advantage with customers and competitive position, et cetera. And we do that through our classes, we do it through conferences, workshops, and community outreach. It is my gigantic pleasure to introduce Gayle Sheppard. Gayle and I met several years ago through one of my former students at Anderson who said, Terry, he says, you need to meet Gayle Sheppard. Gayle is knowledgeable about everything that is going on that is impactful in cloud computing, in artificial intelligence, at the intersection of customers, at the intersection of product, and broadly from a leadership standpoint. Gayle is a corporate VP of product management for Microsoft's Azure Data. She's had a great history through a variety of roles. She was the CEO of Saffron Technology. Saffron was a cognitive computing company that Intel bought, and matter of fact, that's where, again, where I met Gayle was via Intel, because she ran that unit for Intel once they acquired Saffron. She's been VP and Managing Director at PeopleSoft. And she's had, as I mentioned, a very interesting window into technology-based innovation and a special interest in product management, about what does product management look like from a career standpoint for students and certainly from an industry standpoint in terms of creating value. Gayle's going to share a few comments with us up front, and then we'll do Q&A through Slido. And Slido, you just go on to slido.com. You'll see a space for an event code. You enter in Gayle, G-A-Y-L-E, and then you can either enter in your own question or you can upvote on other questions. And I will do my very best to pose all the most popular questions. So Gayle, a big welcome, and we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Terry. It's an honor and a privilege to be here this evening with you. So thank you for that opportunity. As Terry mentioned, I'm a corporate vice president at Microsoft, and I lead our product management for Azure Data. And Azure Data includes a large portfolio, including on-premise SQL Server, the crown jewel within the data family, and then onward into the cloud, where SQL has been the database application on-prem now, of course, runs in the cloud in a variety of capabilities offered to customers, along with our open source tools and databases for MySQL and PostgreSQL, on into our NoSQL family led by Cosmos DB, to data warehouses and data lakes and analytics, and pipeline management for data processing, and onward into from there into data governance. So it's a big portfolio enriched by a team, an incredible team that I inherited when I joined Microsoft a year ago. And we're doing some pretty crazy and important things for customers today with data. And I think if you know Microsoft, you know that our mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to do more, to achieve more. And so at Azure Data, our mission is to deliver the one data platform that empowers the world to make sense of all data anywhere, to do this responsibly and at any scale. And so we're on that mission to achieve products and solutions that deliver that promise to customers.
Excellent. Excellent. Gayle, you want to tell us a little bit about where the innovation is happening? If you look at some of the end customers and interesting applications, what are the first that come to mind?
Well, it's an interesting question, Terry, because there's so much innovation occurring in a company the size of Microsoft. So I'm going to narrow our focus a bit into the areas where I spend most of my day. And clearly, data analytics, data itself is gravity for the digital transformation projects that are underway today. And we see, because we have on-prem technologies as well as cloud technologies, we see the journey that the customer is making and the choices the customer is making in terms of where they invest. clearly in a situation where I have the opportunity to manage a variety of data products that serve a variety of workloads and use cases. We can help the customer adopt those technologies at a pace that's comfortable for them. But where it gets exciting is moving from on-prem to the cloud is actually a very liberating experience, because at the point we do that, I think about all of the things the cloud offers: flexibility, disaster recovery, automatic software updates. Investment is moved from CapEx to OpEx. Increased collaboration comes naturally. The types of tools we're using today, Teams, a product that Microsoft uses for workspace collaboration. We can work from anywhere, right? We have security unmatched, provided by us, and environmentally friendly systems that work on behalf of our communities. So there's a tremendous amount of flexibility that and innovation the cloud provides. And when we look at the CIO role, actually, just stopping there for a moment, CIOs are being incredibly liberated by the cloud, because now they turn to be the chief innovation officer, and they can focus so much more of their resource, right, in innovation, in new apps development, in creating competitive advantage for the companies, which has always been their mission. It's been hard for them to achieve because of software maintenance and the investments they had to make in keeping current software up to date and managing that directly, et cetera. So those costs now are shifted, and those investments in the cloud now liberate them to a large degree from those tasks, so that they can focus on innovation. So when we see that happening, the conversations we have with CIOs is really, how do I take the data sprawl that I have? Data's everywhere. Data's in my SaaS business operation tools. It's on-prem, it's in the cloud. We may have a poly-cloud environment as well. And how do I take that data and make it more usable? I think there's a statistic out that suggests that 73% of all the data in the world is actually not used. And so one would ask, how much of that data that's unused is in fact usable and valuable? And then how do we identify that usable, valuable data? How do we protect it? In other words, categorize it properly so the right people use it at the right time in the right place for the right reason. And then obviously derive value from that data by the corporation. So part of where we see a lot of innovation is actually in that topic, making data more usable while protecting it, securing it and protecting it, making sure it's governed properly for regulatory environments such as GDPR or HIPAA or et cetera. There are many of them. And then ultimately applying machine learning and data science to it, having that be explainable so we understand how we're making decisions, and then extracting those decisions into feedback loops and continuous learning loops as well, so that a decision is made. Often today, we don't know what the outcome of the decision was or what we actually learned from it. And the thing that data allows us to have for the future and decision-making systems, actually those feedback and learning loops. So we can learn from that experience, and we can apply that experience immediately into the next decision that we're going to make. So that's one of the great, it doesn't sound like a brilliant innovation, but clearly it is a great advancement to the way decisions will be made and the experiences that we can capture from those decisions. So those are some of the things that.
Are there certain sectors you're seeing a lot of activity in? I mean, in transportation or healthcare, et cetera. What areas are you seeing a lot of adoption here?
We see actually everywhere. So there is no one industry that's not looking at cloud adoption, or that isn't considering how to make better use of data, right? To extract more value from data. So that would be an obvious thing that everyone's considering, and everyone's trying to figure out how to take advantage of that. The industries that lead the way typically have been, and no surprise, financial services. Financial services, they really operate as one of the most innovative, efficient technology organizations in the world, because they are so technology dependent and rich in their reach and their service of their customers. And so FSI always leads the way. You will see other organizations like retail, and we see retail as clearly a type of industry we're online all the time, and so they've had to quickly advance in terms of their use of data, their use of technology to support those customers, and on it goes. But I would say there's no one industry that is ignoring this trend. And they're all growing at a reasonable pace for the industry that they're in. And so it's quite an exciting time.
And when you mention financial services, I always think of very significant security concerns. Are you finding that is really kind of fading away, and the adoption of large data centers and the cloud, et cetera, that is really what's happening now?
Yes, I think with cloud security technologies like bring your own key, encryption at rest, and other features of this type, that becomes more comfortable to begin moving data to the cloud for financial services companies, and then I think when we do comparisons of how we secure and protect information to their own programs, they can see the advancements that we have made as cloud providers and what is available to them. And so it's a matter of building those plans out and making that that migration or journey to the cloud one that's successful for them, given the size of the data that they have and the importance of it to running their business. But clearly we do see that. I think the other exciting thing for us is the opportunity to help customers define what that journey is, and to do that at a reasonable pace for them because of their own resources and the own projects that they have underway. So Microsoft has been extremely adept at understanding the enterprise, being an enterprise solution provider. It's our muscle, it's in our DNA, and understanding how to plan that out well. So it's exciting for me to be at Microsoft, because as I thought about this role, I had come out of AI, machine learning. I worried about things like episodic memory, and how do we use episodic memory to better understand the world around us, and what will be the next generation of AI that we apply. And so coming into data, my primary reason for wanting to do this is that if some companies, some very significant companies, only have 10 to 20% of their data that they can actually use today, if it's true that 73% of data is not used today, then the opportunity to make data more usable, to drive better insights from that, to improve decision-making on how we serve customers, supply chain decisions we make, how we take care of patients, and on it goes, how we better society through decision-making, then that would be a wonderful journey to be on. And so, and it's a simple idea, hard to do, which is making data more usable.
Makes sense. And let me ask you the next set of questions just about competitive landscape. My impression is AWS historically has been kind of the gorilla, and they've gotten huge share off the back of their e-commerce business, et cetera. But that Azure has gained a huge amount of market share over the past year or two. Is that a fair characterization? And if it is, what do you attribute that to?
Well, I would say the thing that and the reason I'm here at Microsoft that we do well is what I said a few minutes ago, and it's the enterprise muscle that we have, the understanding of the enterprise, right? The understanding of the complexity of the customer's data estate, the application estate, the way applications must be delivered into an enterprise, secure, protected, at enterprise scale, reliability. So I think all of those capabilities that we have as a company serve us well in our cloud business. And so being capable of delivering solutions that were prior on-prem, now in the cloud, being able to scale those out. I think some of the hyperscale technology that we have, the serverless technology that we have, address different needs, right? One of those needs might be big scale out. Another one might be, we don't know what we don't know, and we want to scale out as we can in a serverless environment, right, where very little commitment is made. So these types of business models that we've established for the cloud and for our customers are really important to their adoption rates and their adoption strategies for cloud technology. And then when we get over to my team and to Azure Data, one of the things that we fully understand is the integration requirements that customers have between platforms, between systems, between databases and data warehouses and analytic tools. And so creating end-to-end solutions, end-to-end systems thinking is a big part of our muscle and what we continue to work on today.
Makes sense. One of the most popular questions that's come in from Jackson, and this is on Slido, is putting some predictions about what is the enterprise of the future and what does the world look like even over the next 5 to 10 years. Can you give us your own kind of window into that?
I'll do my best. I am certain that there are people at Microsoft who are much more adept at predicting that than I am. But I'll give it to you from an experience of someone who lives inside data. So you know, a couple of years ago when I was at Intel, and Intel was very much a leader in certain technologies, including the autonomous vehicle and mobile eye, you know, the vision technology. And so, so there, you know, we would think about how is work going to change in the future in front of us, and we are working on things like drones doing inspections, unplanned maintenance events where you had to understand what had just happened, but it'd be very difficult to send a human being into that environment to understand it, but a drone could survey it and bring back information, and we could capture that, do similarity analysis upon it to see if we've ever seen it before, what have we done about it, what should we do about it in this situation, what's the dissimilarity of the event, and then act on it very quickly. And so that was an immediate change in the way people did their work. And the way we made decisions about how to do plant maintenance or remote oil rig maintenance or whatever it might be. Today, and you think about insurance inspections, right? In the past, a tornado would rip through a geo, and you'd have to send people out to do those inspections. And a few years ago, drones became the inspectors, and immediately came back with information was immediately sent back into the insurance companies, and they were able to take care of their customers, resolve those claims so much more quickly, so people could put their lives back together. And these were major changes in the way work was being done, but also the way people were being served. And so as we look forward now with COVID-19 as a major disruption in our work life, so, you know, things like I used to worry about intelligent agents helping us make recommendations and decisions with data. Now I worry about, okay, our collaboration tools, how smart can they become, right, to help us really effectively make this transition from shelter at home to get back to work. But get back to work, we didn't actually leave work. What get back to work means get back to the office. And so some of us will go back to the office full-time, some will go part-time, some won't go at all. I mean, we understand that there will be a shift made, and we don't quite yet know what that means. But what I would expect, it will be highly personalized, right? That teams will form, teams will figure out how to function with this new climate that we've created, and we will now be able to adapt, because we have adapted so quickly already in the circumstances that we're in. And on the roundtable I did earlier, we made one of the students made the observation that we've already adapted to using video as a communication tool. A lot of people were shy to use it. They didn't want to turn the camera on. And so everyone's turning the camera on because we want to be connected. And so I think, you know, that's an example of an adaptation we've made very quickly. And so I can't predict for you what the future work actually is going to be. What I can predict is it won't be what it was before COVID-19. And I think we would all agree with that.
Yeah, and that ties into another question about how COVID-19 has impacted your business, and how is it changing kind of fundamentally customer needs? How do you think it will affect customer needs over the next few years?
Well, I think customers, as you are, as universities are, educational institutions, and what we're seeing personally and in our businesses is that everyone's adopting and adapting to some form of collaboration technology. And so for my team, we had already used this technology. We used Teams already. So for us to continue on wasn't that big of a change. The bigger change, of course, during a crisis like this is work-life balance, right? And children at home and elder family members at home and that sort of things. That's been the major change that everyone's had to adjust to. But from a work perspective, we were already doing this. We just, maybe not as intensely, but we were already using these tools. And so it was easy for us to adapt. From a customer perspective, they too were using these tools because frankly, when you have global teams around the world, and you have to have meetings, leadership meetings and decision-making meetings, product meetings, you're going to do that and not require people to hop on planes, but to do them in real time at time and time zone restrictions that allow everyone to participate. And so we already were doing that. I made the observation, I was just chatting with a friend the other day, asked me how my work changed. So, well, you know, we used to do the collaboration tools as a global way of bringing people together in real time. Now we use them for the neighborhood. And that's the biggest change, right? It's just, you know, geographically we shrink when we use them. And I'm hoping that will continue because it's a tremendous productivity improvement for us.
Yeah. You know, I heard it, I shouldn't even mention his name and the company name because it's a competitor, but Eric Yuan, who's the founder CEO of Zoom, used to be at Cisco at WebEx. Yeah. He spoke at an event. I asked him, tell me about the future areas of innovation at Zoom. And he talked about long term, the ability with enough scale and an opt-in, the ability to understand certain video conferences, what are the themes, what are the follow-up actions, et cetera, so that people don't have to sit through all the meetings and take notes and all that other stuff. Do you buy into all that? And is that something that teams will do with Microsoft? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, we do some of that already today. So we've had this conversation actually at the roundtable about, and then Dean and I had this conversation as well earlier, you know, what do we lose in these conversations? And I was thinking, well, we lose the face-to-face personal touch. But what we gained was that the themes of the meeting, the chats in the meeting, the ideas brought forward in the meeting, often they get lost. They're not recorded in an in-person meeting. Often they're not attributed to the right person who had the idea. Today in Teams, they are actually captured and time-stamped and person-stamped and commented on and supported and discussed live in real time within the meeting. So this is I think a major improvement to the opportunity. And someone can be talking and you have an idea, you can force it over in the chat as a question that can be addressed once a person's done. You don't have to interrupt them. You don't have to wait till they're done. And all of a sudden the ideas are just flowing. I actually believed there's less resistance to surface those ideas in a team environment than potentially in an in-person environment. If that makes
sense. Makes a lot of sense. Let me shift now, Gayle, into some of the leadership-related issues and product management-related issues, et cetera. Let me start on the product front, because I know when you and I met a few months ago, you had a really impressive kind of passion for the role of a product manager and how fundamental that is to the company. And in turn, what do MBAs need to be kind of thinking about if you want to be a good product manager? Maybe start at just the importance and the ideal state of a product manager at a company like Microsoft. Tell us a little about your thoughts there.
Well, okay, so this is a topic of passion, and I'll try to do it justice here. So I think, and I'm going to use actually a slide that I use for myself and my team when I'm talking about product management. It's over here to the left of me. But there are actually what I think of as 5 major skill areas in product management. And I would describe them as business acumen, market orientation, soft skills, technical skills, and customer experience grounding skills. And those 5 skills have lots of disciplines and features underneath them. But when we think about the program that you and I were discussing, I thought these 5 zones, if you will, characterize pretty well what you were trying to develop as well from a product management discipline. You know, product management is probably one of in most organizations is anemic in terms of the understanding of it because it's so diverse in terms of skills and capabilities. And Horowitz is the one I think who wrote the book, The Hard Thing About Really Hard Things, and he says in his Ben says in his book, you know, the product manager is the CEO of the product. Well, a lot of people take exception to that because you're really not the CEO. You don't control all the resources, et cetera. But the idea of that is right. And the idea of that is we actually in product management own product lifecycle management. We own it from vision, inception, design, to building it, to delivering it to the market, to serving customers in the market, this continuous serving that we do in the cloud, to bringing partners in. We've got ecosystems that we build, and then eventually we may retire the product. But during its lifetime, there's a robust ecosystem that supports it. There's a robust feature of a set of continuous integration, continuous development, continuous innovation that occurs in the product lifecycle, and a significant amount of customer innovation, joint innovation, as well as interaction, usability, feature measurements, et cetera, that go on inside a product. And so, so ultimately in product management, we own the definition of that. We may not execute on all those points, but if we're doing our job well, we're going to imagine that in the very beginning. We're going to help define it. We're going to help influence it with the teams that we work with, whether it be marketing, customer service, software engineering or manufacturing, et cetera. We're going to influence the lifetime of this product. And we're also going to measure customer lifetime value from the product as well, something that is often overlooked, but a critical component of product lifecycle management. So, so that does require good strategy skills. It does require business acumen. You do have to worry about pricing. You do have to worry about cost of goods sold, right, and profitability, and how to price it properly. You do have to help the marketing team write the content, to train the field organization, the partner organization on how to bring the product to market and position it properly with the customer. You do have to worry about competitive analysis, et cetera, et cetera. And so business acumen, market orientation, soft skills, which are influence skills, right? You don't own something, you don't own execution of something, but you to be successful, it has to be done. It takes a lot of great communication skills and influence skills in order to make that happen. And then technical skills, you cannot be a product manager and not understand the tech that you're going to be building out and working with the engineers who are actually going to do the development. You have to be able to communicate. There will be some PMs who do that deeply, some PMs not as deeply, but you must have the technical foundation. Otherwise, I would say that you would be in a product marketing role or a supporting role for product management where you would not be a product manager. So it's a combination of those skills. And then the thing that I'm most excited about here at Microsoft is that we're really working on product management as being a world-class product management organization across all of our businesses, establishing it as a very strong career with well-defined opportunities for growth. And so that if you join our team, we would expect that you're joining a world-class team of product managers and one of the best, if not the best in the world.
Excellent. Let me go through several of these very helpful items individually. So first of all, when you mentioned, one of the key responsibilities is the definition of the product. And, at Anderson and a lot of other business schools, we talk about disruptive innovation, and we talk about continuous. And the argument obviously on disruptive is you shouldn't talk to customers too much because they don't know what they don't know. And you need to come up with the breakthrough things. The flip side is you got to keep those customers happy. Tell us, when you're thinking about product definition, how much of your time and focus is on what we would consider disruptive innovation that you've got to come up from a technical standpoint, and how much of it is talk to the customers and listen to them when you define product?
Well, it's a great question, and they're not mutually exclusive, as you know. So let me figure out how to answer that. So I think disruption occurs. Disruption can be simple. Disruption can be redefining how a job is done, such that we extract the work out of the job that's more task-oriented, and we put into the work the task, if you will, or functions that are more thinking-oriented, more decision-oriented, more high-value. And so that disrupts a worker, that disrupts a team, that disrupts how work is done inside an organization. A different disruption is that we bring something online, like Teams. Teams actually is a disruptive technology. It changed the way we meet, changed the way we communicate, the way we collaborate. And now we're able to actually, inside a crisis of such significance, most have not seen anything like it before, at least in the last century, that that we're able to work. We're able to get our work done and continue our businesses and our lives and communicating with our families around the world that we couldn't see or next door, as the case may be. So that's a disruptive technology. So we think about and data. I think the really important part for us is that we have transactional systems and analytics systems coming together. We have streaming intelligence coming in so that analytics at the speed of transaction arrival is actually now possible. We have data sharing. Data sharing is the opportunity for multiple corporations or divisions within a corporation or members of an ecosystem to bring data together from their respective data estates, unified in such a way that it creates new value for that organization. And that can be for the good of the people, for societal good, like cancer research or some COVID-19 research that's actually actively happening today in front of us, or it could be for creating new business value and monetizing these business models. But that is a disruption unto itself. The idea that data is now converging from all of these sources into a virtual, if not physical, usable form is disruptive, again, to the information available to us for decision making. So all day, we're dealing with disruptions of various magnitudes all day long. How we work with customers, if we take those ideas to them, we're not expecting the customer to define what the next generation of products is. We're not expecting a customer to, to bring us a roadmap and say, could you build this for us? Our jobs are really to think about what's ahead, understand the complexity of the world the customer is living in, and think about how to help them simplify that so they can get more done. They can get more done and more cost effectively. They can get more done because they have other ideas they want to go get to. And so therefore we reduce the cost of this thing in order to transfer resources over to somewhere else. There's a variety of ways we help customers, but the idea is to bring to them the opportunity to participate in the discussion about what we are thinking about. Is it viable? How would we implement it for them? And to get their feedback and their ideas. And that's the big idea part of that conversation. And then when we move into actually building products, designing products, we select customers and users and personas within customer environments. And we have methodologies at Microsoft for doing that are part of the product development process, so that we're getting constant feedback and learning and those feedback loops from the customer to make sure that the experience we're building is actually one they'll use. Yeah, and Gayle, what's I don't know if you have a mental map or a trick of the trade when you have a sales organization that's saying, you know what, I'm ready to buy, but I need this type of feature adjustment and then I can go do X, Y, or Z. And I would picture, in a leadership role like you've got, you're getting flooded with all these ideas that are more immediate needs on the product. How do you wade through those to say, I'm going to do this and not this, and prioritize this and not that? That's probably one of the hardest things that we do in product management is actually the prioritization. So first we would go into the fundamentals. Fundamentals for us are security and protection, and the things that scalability, performance, things that must work well in order to function at the enterprise level. So we're going to judge everything based on our ability to do that. A startup, a new co, may not use those same rules, right? Because they're operating with a different scale, a different expectation. At Microsoft, we're the enterprise cloud company. By our virtue of saying that, we have a commitment to the customer. Says we understand your complexities. We understand the enterprise environment. We understand security and protection, data protection, et cetera. So there's just a different approach that we're going to take. So for those who are listening in, who are working on startups, this may not ring true to them. So we capture the fundamentals. Then there are the things that actually must be done in order for the customer to use the technology. If it doesn't create an improvement for the end user, if it creates more work, more steps, they're not going to adopt it. They will resist it with great force. And so you have to judge that. You have to understand the way jobs were done or are being done, and the job you're trying, the way you're trying to improve the job to be done in the future, and make sure you've synced that properly with the various personas who will in fact use the product. So those are the ways we judge, or at least they're big inputs into how we judge what we do.
Makes sense. Let me go into the next area of product management, where you were talking about the skills and experiences it's necessary to be a good product manager. And actually, when you listed your 5 items, only one was technical, but you said people need to have a technical foundation. Obviously, we've got mostly MBAs on this call tonight. Tell us what you mean by technical foundation. Do you need to have a technical degree, or is that not as necessary, but you need to have a set of experiences or awareness otherwise, that even if you're non-technical, you could still kind of do fine?
Yeah, you can do fine. You need technical acumen. Maybe you were not a software engineer, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe you don't have a computer science degree, but you need to have a capacity for technical acumen, for technical depth and understanding, and which can be learned clearly on the job. Mm-hmm. If you bring it into the role, even better. And when I think about technical skills, the first thing that always comes to my mind is the ability to have a communication with a software developer, with an engineer, and to be able to communicate to the engineer what it is we're trying to build, the features as you see them, the important technical characteristics of the feature, to be able to define that, and to have a discussion with the engineer that says, okay, here's how we could build that. Okay, is this important? Is that important? And to be able to do real-time trade-offs with the engineer in that design process. Yeah. That's an important capability. Not everyone can go deep. We have in our organization what we think of as technical program managers who love that conversation, who go deep, and but they love product management as well. They love the customer interaction, and they love some of the activities around product management that fulfill them. And so they've chosen to be in PM instead of software engineering, but they could have been software engineers. And then there are PMs in our organization who really did come from the MBA program, or from philosophy, or anthropology, or somewhere else. And they have a different orientation. Our, designers may be anthropologists. Our PMs maybe have a heavy data science background, or be physicists. It doesn't mean that you had to come from the MBA program or the computer science program. It's really all about your ability to understand the problem, diagnose the problem, break it down into composable parts, and understand that problem and how the problem can be fixed with technology.
Okay. Excellent. And if advice for people that are interviewing, let's assume somebody is a non-technical background, finishing their MBA, what would you look for in an interview to say that somebody's good at understanding the problem, able to speak to the engineers, the things you just kind of laid out on technical foundation? What would you be looking for in an interview that would kind of say they've got it or they don't?
Yeah, so the first one would be how we break down a problem. Right. So present a problem to the candidate, and then ask them to think through how they would solve it. That's one, because that begins to help us understand their critical thinking skills. Mm-hmm. I would also ask them to evaluate a product that they use, and to describe it, right, in performance and scale and usability and experience and things, characteristics of that sort, so I can understand how they evaluate the product. So one is problem-solving skills, one is design and product evaluation. Those are two really important indicators. And then to talk about their experience with technology per se, and how they learn, how they've learned a particular technology, and they define it. I wouldn't ask them to ask them how they would approach implementing a SQL database on cloud versus on-prem, but they can select that. And again, that exposes how we think, how we understand the world we live in. And its complexities, how we break down the complexities within it. Those are really important skills for a product manager.
Yeah, and are there experiences you'd recommend MBAs have to get those skills? Are there, activities at school or classes they take or summer internships, or et cetera, that you'd say, hey, be really thoughtful to prioritize these?
Well, I would definitely say take some computer science classes and look at whatever field of tech you're going to go into, or product management you're going to go into, whether you're going to be building airplane, want to be product managing airplane design or something else. Pick something and sort of specialize in it. So I think that's number one. What else would I suggest? I think also experience in participating as an intern in these teams would be really highly valuable. That gives you exposure to your acumen, right? Your adaptability into these unknown environments. I walked into Microsoft a year ago without having a lot of experience in databases. My experience was on the app side. I build apps, I address end users, I work in data analytics, not in database design. And so I had to learn database design, and I'm learning. I've been drinking from the fire hose the past year. Do I have the capacity to do that? Of course I do. So that's part of that. Many people will find yourself in that role. You're thought of as a visionary, a design visionary. You're thought of as an idea person. You have critical thinking skills. You may walk into a job where you don't have the technical foundations. Are you willing to invest the time to learn and to do what you have to do ahead of that, ahead of taking that role, to learn as much as you can, and then while you're there, learn on the job as well as after hours, right? It's all about your passion for the role and how much time you're willing to dedicate to learn. So I think there are opportunities for product managers who are not computer scientists. That is clear, but there are some comfort zones that you need to have. Clearly, an MBA student would have business strategy comfort. They'd have product portfolio management thinking. Key performance indicators, OKRs, these types of things are part of the product management discipline. Market orientation, ability to do research, understand future trends, and sort of translate them back into, okay, there's a future trend, we want to head in that direction, how do we get there with what we have today? What changes would we make in our product portfolio? What will we add? What will we extract? What will we increment? The soft skills we've already talked about, which is team leading and influencing and making things happen across this product lifecycle management throughout the organization, and which requires great communication skills, oral and written. And then the customer experience ground, and be able to articulate to the customer what the value of the why, the what, the when, the how. And the how much, the how being the technical implementation of it. And so those communication skills translate from inside the organization to outside to the customer. And some of our great PMs are those people who have, these well-rounded capabilities. So again, technical depth is required if you're going to be a technical PM. Technical depth, less technical depth potentially, technical acumen required to be a more generalist PM.
Makes a lot of sense. Let me move into the next area, which is broadly about leadership. And to start out, if you would, tell us a little bit more about your leadership journey, and tell us where were the inflection points of big learnings, big mistakes, big advances. What were those things that you'd say, make sure you're having that yourself? Tell us about your journey.
Oh goodness. Okay, so I grew up in a family that really had two, maybe three major disciplines within it. One was engineering, and that engineering was construction focused, so building things. One was farming, so that was growing things, and the third was the ministry. Actually, grew up in the South, so I had in my family lineage a Baptist and a Methodist minister. Oh. So, right, so it was a grassroots, pull yourself up by your bootstraps type of environment. Mm-hmm. And, but in that environment, there was a tremendous amount of independence that we were taught, and there was a tremendous amount of entrepreneurial spirit, right? Because our worst enemy was the weather, frankly, in both construction and in farming. So survivability, resilience, grit, those are all skills that I think I developed very early on in my life. And I would work in my father's construction company and actually run it right out of college. Well, he took a respite for an illness that he had. I was one of 4 children, and he asked me, I was the 3rd child, the only daughter, and I was asked to run his construction company. And so you can imagine at that age, running a construction company filled with people who knew a lot more about it than I did, that I made a lot of mistakes. The only really good thing I think I did, as I look back on it, the really good thing that I did is that I knew that what I didn't know. And so my oldest brother and my uncles were my best friends and were my advisors and were the people I relied on to make things happen because they were the experts. And so, and they were, unfortunately, they were very supportive and encouraging. So I had a wonderful experience, although I made lots of mistakes and I suffered in different ways in that role. I would go back to my passion, which was actually software. And so I spent the rest of my life in software. And my real passion in software as I began my career had to do with defining applications and designing those applications, helping develop those applications, and delivering them to the customer. So, when we looked at the product lifecycle management, I owned the entire product lifecycle management for the most part, except for some of the core engineering. Mm-hmm. So I would learn the interactions with customers, the need to have ideas, to design, to reinforce, what's good and what's bad about that with customers, et cetera, at a very young age. I decided, though, that with my experience early on in the family business, that I did want to be a CEO. I did want to be a GM. So I would go through in my software career and do almost every role that was possible to do in the software industry at the time. So that was run customer service teams, consulting implementation teams in the field, run technical support, sales support, do product marketing, do product management, run field sales operations, partner channels, international businesses, both in Asia Pacific and in Japan, come back and run worldwide sales, and then I would leave to be the CEO of a startup. So it's hard to do that today at that level, but Satya did it, and Microsoft, right? I look at Jason, my boss, and Scott Gary, they've done it, right? So it's not impossible, but it was that motivation that I had that was in my grassroots, obviously, to want to be a CEO that led me there. Now, once I became a CEO, probably the most important decisions I ever made always tested my courage and not so much my intelligence. And the learnings come from making the really hard decisions. And whether those hard decisions are to go raise money and give up some ownership so that you can grow your business, whether things aren't going so well. 2008, 2009 come to my mind, where I had to lay people off that I adored, but the business would not survive the startup that I had if I didn't do that. So there are decisions that we have to make that they might be right or wrong, but they're really hard to deliver on. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing. One of my important learnings. I think nothing motivates us more as individuals, as human beings, than being so passionate about something that the thing supersedes our personal biases. And an example of that would be that if you work on a large team and the large team has competing products, but the right thing to do is to combine them or to integrate them or to stop doing A over here so that A can actually happen over here in this other product because it makes more sense. And because it's for the better of the company, it's for the better of the team, it's for the better of the customer that you make those decisions. And so I always know when we're onto something that's really important, because all of a sudden the politics soften and the conversation elevates to a whole new level. And that's how throughout my life, and I hold on to that as a defining moment. Yeah. And I think that frankly, PMs and CEOs, you got to go do those jobs. I don't think you're born to, with the knowledge. It's hard. It's going to be hard. to get the master's degree in product management without having some experience in the field. And so one of the important things for us as we build out these programs is to make sure there's plenty of opportunity to work with corporations and PM roles while you're actually learning the discipline itself. Because I think are really important. I think the discipline within the university program of having product management elevated to a discipline is one of the most incredible things I've heard this year. And I'm very excited about it. It's been ignored for a long time, but it's so critical to the future of how work gets done, how products are designed, and how well we love them.
Yeah. Gayle, when you were describing your narrative, it sounded like it was all leading towards being an entrepreneur. When you talked about, building things, growing things, the ministry, et cetera, et cetera. I thought you were going to kind of come up, but you've made a transition to leading in a very large organization. What was that transition like? What do you have to be good at to kind of operate in a large organization where I would think the personal interest, the politics, whatever you want to call it, is fairly notable?
I think a growth mindset would be for number one, and this is an important part of our culture at Microsoft. I think entering an environment where they respect diversity of thought, not just gender, right? Not just culture, not just race, but thought. And thought comes from experience. Thought comes from our academia background. It comes from our economic, social backgrounds, and it comes from our work experience. So I think Microsoft is one of those places. I think I walked into a role that was being created for the first time. And so what the role becomes is one that's Microsoft standard on one aspect of it and created by me and my team on the other. And so there was an opportunity to invent. And the entrepreneurial aspects of this role are such that 73% of the data isn't used. What are we going to do about that? So all those entrepreneurial skills have to kick in and go to work to solve that problem.
Makes sense. Gayle, the number one question asked is, what has your experience been like being a female leader in a large organization like Microsoft?
Well, I couldn't imagine a better place to be a female leader in a large organization than Microsoft. Diversity and inclusion are a major, I won't call it an initiative. I will call it a fabric that is being, some capabilities and muscle being built into the fabric of the company and the people. And so it is something that we talk about as a leadership team, as a management team, and to our employees on a daily basis. So that's one. I would also say that I have many colleagues. So there are many female women VPs inside Microsoft, and some of my greatest relationships are with those people. So I entered a company where I wasn't the only woman in the room. And I think I have spent most of my career as the only woman in the room, whether it was the boardroom, the leadership meeting, or the customer meeting. And so that's also refreshing here at Microsoft. So Microsoft it's been terrific. I have no barriers. There are no barriers that I can see.
And Gayle, how do we, and I'll define we in a second here, but how do we see more women in tech leadership and women in leadership? Who owns that issue, and how does it get addressed?
Well, it's interesting you asked that. I was thinking earlier when Addie asked me for some, what would your career advice be? And I left out something I meant to tell her, which is role model the culture you want to be part of. Role model the culture you want to be in. And so all of us, whether we're a junior, we're a brand new employee, we might be starting at an entry level, might be coming in from the inside like I did at another level, but we bring with us our aspirations for culture. And for diversity and inclusion, and for creating opportunity and success for each other. And so we have to role model that as individuals. So that's everyone's job, is what I'm trying to say. And then second, clearly we have to be a little, as if we're changing a culture, we have to be really intense about that. We have to, if it's really important, then we're going to focus in on it. We're going to counsel, guide, and help and coach and mentor those who need it to help move them along to adopt that growth mindset that we need. And we're going to make sure that we spend time with our teams and understand what they're, for example, if you're hiring and growing a team and you have diversity as one of your major goals for the organization, but you're not measuring it per se. You're not saying you must have this metric met, but you want to naturally create a diverse environment. Then you're going to talk about it. And you're going to look at candidates, and you're going to ask your team members to think about expanding their candidate base if it's not diverse enough. There are all kinds of ways to create these cultures that change behavior as opposed to mandate and force, but change the behavior through coaching, mentoring, and modeling. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's my obligation as a leader, is to make sure that that's present in our thinking about what we do and how we grow, how we develop.
Excellent. Gayle, let me ask you one last question, and then we'll do a wrap up here. And it ties into what the message you were talking to Addie about. If you were to give advice to this audience, made up obviously of mostly of MBAs, but some of them are alums, et cetera, what advice would you give everybody here?
Go forth and do good things. What advice would I give you? I would say, if your managers, leaders, which you probably are if you went through the MBA program, you have the opportunity to be the best you can be and develop organizations and people, whether you're an influencer in your organization, a leader, manager in your organization. You have the opportunity to develop some of the things we've been talking about today through the role modeling. Model what you want, and when you do that, and when you illustrate that to others, they will follow. If they're not, and they will join you, and they will follow, and they will by nature of their association with that idea want to be part of your team. That's one. I would also say that. Discipline yourself to see yourself, your team, your organization, your business through the eyes of others. So those eyes of others are your employees, your customers, your partners, and the community that your business lives in, whether that's global or regional or very local. And so take that outside view of yourself and your business success, however large or small it may be. And that, if you work with that mindset, I think that you're in this continuous improvement, continuous awareness environment that does allow you to be the very best you can be.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Gayle, I always like to finish up anytime we have a luminary speaker like you. I always like to share my own so whats as part of the thank you about what I took away from it. I took away several things that you shared this evening. The first one is broadly this data revolution. How much data, the 73% of data that is not being used, and the limitless opportunities to create value for customers, create value from a product standpoint, et cetera. Another takeaway that I got is about this broad-based set of skills in product management. That isn't just a technical degree, but it's a broad way of understanding customer problems, being able to dialogue with customers about them, being able to dialogue internally about what needs are, et cetera. That all of that defines success in product management. I got a third message from you, which is a lot about the raw ingredients of rising up through an organization, and whether that's grit that you talk about, the desire to do all these different roles, and the desire to associate with growth and do what's necessary to grow was another kind of big set of takeaways that I had. A memorable quote that you had is the real test in your life were those of courage and not intelligence. That's a really important and kind of provides some consolation when we go through tough times, that's why they probably feel difficult, but also is where the gain is going to come from.
That's right.
And your final thoughts about the culture that you think is necessary for success, diversity of thought, model what you want. Make sure you're actually acting on what should be, as opposed to talking about it in the abstract. And people will follow that, and that will create impact. Gayle, let me just say a huge, huge thank you. A thank you for your insights with us. I want to thank you for your partnership specifically with Anderson, because Microsoft's been a huge recruiter. And I think you've done us a really good service by saying, what does success look like of our students in their own careers at Microsoft and beyond. So a big thank you, and I hope we can have you back again very, very soon.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much, Terry.
Thanks.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.